Round the World Lit Audio. Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Episode 2. Part 1. Chapters 7 to 13. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest stories ever told, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week. Free to listen. Chapter recap. In Episode 1, Okonkwo was established, the greatest wrestler in the 9 villages. A man who built everything himself, from nothing, driven by a single fear, that he would become his father. The community of umuofia was established, its governance, its oracle, its week of peace, its new yam festival, its wrestling, its fully realized life. A boy named Ikemefuna arrived frightened and became part of the household over 3 years, close to Nwoye, quietly beloved by Okonkwo himself. Episode 2. Part 1. Chapters 7 through 13. Chapter 7. Ikemefuna's death. Ikemefuna had been in Okonkwo's household for 3 years when the oracle spoke. The oracle of the hills and caves, the Igbo, whose pronouncements were the community's highest authority, spoke through the priestess Chilo, a woman of the village who in ordinary life sold her goods in the market, and was a friend of Okonkwo's wife, but in the service of the oracle became something entirely other, a vessel for a voice that came from somewhere deeper than the human. The oracle said, Ikemefuna must die. The elders of umuofia gathered. The message was clear. The boy had been given as compensation for the woman of umuofia who had been killed, had been held as a kind of living debt, pending the decision of the community. The decision had come. Ogbuefi Ezeudu, an elder of great age and great authority, came to Okonkwo. He said, the clan has decided about the boy. He will be killed, but I want you to have nothing to do with it. He calls you father. Do not participate in this. Okonkwo heard the warning. He did not take it. The men of the village took Ikemefuna to the forest. They told him he was going home, told him with the specific cruelty of a community performing a necessary act and choosing, for their own comfort, to perform it with a lie. Ikemefuna walked with the men who were his community, the men of the village where he had spent 3 years, toward what he thought was home. He was happy. This is the detail that Achebe records, and that has lodged in the memory of every reader since, the specific, devastating detail of Ikemefuna being happy on the way to his death, because he had been told he was going home, and he believed it. Then one of the men raised his machete. Ikemefuna turned. He saw the blow coming. He ran, not away from the men, but toward Okonkwo. He ran to his father. He cried out, my father, they are killing me. Okonkwo raised his machete. He killed Ikemefuna. He did not want to appear weak. This is Achebe's explanation, not a justification, not a defense, but a description of the precise mechanism of a specific human failure. Okonkwo killed the boy he had come to love because he was afraid that not killing him would look like softness, like the thing he feared most, like his father. He killed Ikemefuna with his own hand rather than let anyone see that he was capable of being moved. He went home. He did not eat for 2 days. He lay on his bed in the dark, and thought about what he had done and found, inside himself, the specific emptiness of someone who has destroyed something they valued in order to prove they didn't value it. Nwoye, his son, who had been Ikemefuna's closest companion for 3 years, felt the truth of it without being told. He felt it in the way that children sometimes know things that adults have decided to keep from them, not through information but through a quality of absence, a specific wrongness in the air. He knew Ikemefuna was dead. He knew his father had done it. Something broke in Nwoye, something that had been growing in him, a doubt, a question, a sensitivity to suffering that the umoffian masculine ideal had no room for, broke open. He did not weep. He did not speak. He felt it close over him, the way cold water closes over someone who has gone under and found the surface further away than expected. This moment, Nwoye's internal breaking, is one of the most important in the novel, because it is the moment that explains everything Nwoye will do later. The missionaries, when they come, will offer him something that addresses exactly this wound. But that is still to come. Chapter 8. After Ikemefuna, Okonkwo could not eat. His friend Obierika came to visit, the friend who had been there through the years, who knew Okonkwo better than anyone, who had not gone with the men to the forest. Okonkwo said, when did you become a shivering old woman? He said it as he always said difficult things, as an attack, as a test, as a way of making the conversation go in the direction that wouldn't require him to feel what he was feeling. Obierika said, I did not go because I did not think it was right. The oracle said the boy should die. It did not say you should kill him. This is the moral center of chapter 8, the question that Obierika asks and that Okonkwo cannot receive. There is a difference between following the community's decision and doing the killing yourself. Okonkwo chose to do the killing. That choice was his. Okonkwo said, you are becoming a woman. Obierika said nothing further about Ikemefuna. They talked about other things. The community. the betrothal of Obierika's daughter, the customs of neighboring clans. They talked about everything except what they were actually talking about. Okonkwo slowly recovered. He ate. He worked. He was Okonkwo again, the man of achievement and will, the man who showed nothing. But he was not entirely Okonkwo again. Something had shifted in the compound. Nwoye was different. Okonkwo noticed it and attributed it to weakness, the specific weakness he had always feared in his son, the softness that reminded him of his father. He had not yet understood that what he was seeing was the consequence of what he had done. Chapter 9. Ezeudu. Okonkwo's daughter Ezeudu was the child of his heart. He would not have said this, would not have said of any child that she was the child of his heart, because the language of fondness was not his language. But Ezeudu was the one he cared for most, the one whose intelligence and spirit most resembled what he wished Nwoye had been. She was an Ogbanj, a child who died and returned repeatedly, who came back to torment the same mother again and again, dying in childhood and being reborn to the same family. This was the Igbo understanding of a specific pattern of infant mortality, a spiritual explanation for a devastating reality, and it was taken completely seriously. Okonkwo's wife Ikemefuna had lost 9 children before Ezeudu. Ezeudu had survived to the age of 10, which was extraordinary. Her Iuwa, the stone that bound her to the spirit world, and enabled her return, had been found and destroyed years before. But when Ezeudu fell ill on a night in the stories present, the community's response was the response of people who understood what was at stake. The priestess Chilo, the same woman who carried the oracle's voice, came in the night for Ezeudu. She said the god Igbala wished to see the child. Ikemefuna followed in the dark, through the night, through the forest, through every place the priestess walked with Ezeudu on her back, unwilling to let her daughter out of her sight. It was an act of extraordinary maternal courage, to follow the oracle's vessel through the night knowing that to interfere was prohibited and following anyway, staying close enough to know her daughter was alive. Okonkwo followed too. He followed at a distance, in the dark, saying nothing to his wife. He was Okonkwo and he would not say, "I am here because I am afraid for my daughter." But he was there. He stayed in the shadows and followed, and was there. Ezeudu was returned to her mother before dawn. The oracle had looked at her and sent her home. The night ended. Chapter 10. The Ezeudu. The Ezeudu sat in judgment. The Ezeudu were the 9 masked figures who represented the ancestral spirits of the clan, the most solemn and authoritative institution of Umuofia's governance, before whom disputes were brought and from whom judgments were final. Everyone understood that the men behind the masks were men of the village, but this understanding was never spoken, and never acknowledged. The Ezeudu were the ancestors. The masks made them so. A case was brought. A man named Ezeudu had beaten his wife so severely that she had fled to her family. He wanted her returned. Her brothers refused to send her back. The Ezeudu heard both sides. They retired to deliberate. They returned. The lead Ezeudu said, "Our brother, we have listened to your case. A man who beats his wife when she is not at fault is like a dog, who barks at his own shadow. Go to your in-laws and beg your wife to return. Take a pot of wine and tell them you are sorry." He said, "If she then refuses to return, we shall have words to say." The judgment was just, the process was ceremonial, the institution was functioning exactly as it was designed to function. The dispute was resolved according to the community's values, with the authority of the ancestors invoked to make the resolution binding. This is what Achebe shows with the Ezeudu, a system of governance that worked, that had its own logic and its own dignity. He shows it before the missionaries arrive so that when the missionaries arrive and dismiss everything they encounter as primitive and without value, the reader understands what is actually being dismissed. Chapters 11 and 12, The Priestess and the Festival. The life of the community continued. Achebe moves between the large and the small with the specific ease of a writer who knows his world completely, between the Ezeudu and their ceremony, and the women preparing food for a betrothal feast, between the oracle's pronouncements and the everyday texture of Igbo life in the compound. The betrothal feast for Obierika's daughter, Yuri, the bringing of palm wine, was a celebration of the community's continuity, of the way marriages organized the clans and connected families, and created the specific social fabric that held Umuofia together. Women cooked through the night. Men drank. The young people danced. The community expressed itself as a community, as a thing that continued because the people in it chose to continue it together. Okonkwo participated. He was in the community as he had always been, a man of importance, respected, present at the ceremonies that mattered. The specific wound of Ikemefuna and the specific damage to his relationship with Nwoye were interior things, not visible from outside. The community could not see what was eroding inside the compound. Chapter 13. The Gun, the Exile. At the funeral of Ogbuefi Ezeudu, the elder who had warned Okonkwo not to participate in Ikemefuna's death, the guns were fired. Guns were fired at funerals in Umuofia, the cannon-like explosives that accompanied the departure of important men. That marked the passage of the great. Ezeudu had been one of the greatest of the village elders. The funeral was accordingly significant. The drums, the egwugu, the firing of guns. Okonkwo's gun exploded. It was an accident. The gun was old or loaded incorrectly or simply malfunctioned, and when it fired it killed Ezeudu's son, who was standing nearby. The boy fell. The boy was dead. In umuofia, killing a clansman, even accidentally, was a female achu, a crime against the earth goddess Ani, that required exile. Not the same exile as deliberate murder, which was male achu. The punishment was different, less severe in duration, but exile nonetheless. 7 years outside the clan. Okonkwo had one night. His friends came in the dark and helped him move his yams, his tools, his wives and children, the things of the compound. They carried everything out in the dark, and Okonkwo watched his compound being emptied and did not speak, and did not weep. Before dawn they set fire to his compound. The animals were slaughtered. The red earth walls were pulled down. The barn was demolished. Not out of hatred, the community had to cleanse itself of what had happened on its ground, had to make the place clean again. This was the law. Okonkwo watched his compound burn. Then he left for his mother's homeland, Mbanta, the village of his mother's family, where he would spend 7 years in exile. He thought of his father. He had spent his entire life trying to be everything his father was not, had driven himself harder, built more, achieved more, controlled more. And now, through a freak accident at a funeral, he was leaving everything he had built, disgraced and exiled, his trajectory interrupted. He thought, I am not my father. But this is what happens to me anyway. He went into the night. Mbanta was waiting. Episode transition. You have reached the end of episode 2 of Things Fall Apart, by Chinua Achebe. Ikemefuna is dead. Nwoye is broken inside. Okonkwo has been exiled for 7 years. And in umuofia and across the surrounding villages, something is coming that no one in the community has yet encountered. The missionaries, the new religion, the colonial government. When Okonkwo returns from exile, the world he left will not be the world he returns to. Episode 3 is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new episode arrives every week.